Good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on this lovely first week of the NFL season, the first weekend, Friday night. Thursday night, we had our first NFL game, the Cowboys and the Buccaneers. And, of course, this Sunday, lots of other teams will be playing, including a particular team that wears black and gold, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers, as they'll be taking on the Buffalo Bills at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. So it's an exciting time in Steeler Nation. It's an exciting time if you're an NFL fan, a football fan, both college and pro, I would imagine. And we never thought we'd make it this far, did we? Remember back in January when you were lamenting that loss to the Browns in the wild card game and wondering if Ben would retire, if Pouncey would retire, what would they do with the salary cap? What about that depth? Well, you're probably still wondering about that. But here we are. We finally made it to the season, the regular season. And I can't wait for Sunday. And I'm sure you feel the same way. And before I get started, I'd like to please, as always, encourage you to like and subscribe to our Behind the Steel Curtain YouTube channel, our live channel where we bring you so many live shows each and every week, including the Six Pack, The Hangover, Know Your Enemy, the Steelers Preview, Touchdown Under. We're gonna have some post game stuff after the game on Sunday after the Bills game, and of course you can catch those shows, all the live shows, also on Facebook Live as they're happening. So please check us out on Facebook too. And of course, you can check out all of our live shows after the fact, if you so choose. If you just like to listen, you can find those on any audio platform, including Apple, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, you name it. If you can find podcasts, you can find our channel. So please check us out. And speaking of the audio side, we also have audio only shows, including From the Cutting Room Floor with Jeffrey Benedict. We have the live mic with Michael Beck, the deputy editor behind the Steel Curtain, who's always busy out there on social media, does a great job with our social media platform. Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, the Stat Geek with Dave Schofield. And I gotta mention the Scobro Show every Tuesday night with Dave and his brother Rich. Please check that out on the live side or the audio side. We have the War Room with Matty Peverall. Oh gosh, we have so many shows. We have new shows. What Ian's talking about. We have fantasy football stuff, all kinds of stuff. I mean, we have dozens of shows. I mean, I'm not just making that up. We actually have, I think, 25 shows, 24 shows now all together between the live and the audio side. So please check that out. And check out Behind the Steel Curtain website where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown. Anytime there's a breaking news story, anytime a defensive player signs the biggest non-quarterback contract in the history of the franchise, we bring it to you. As we like to say, it's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And I just want to welcome everybody to the live chat. Cree-Ix, he was the first one here. Before I even logged on to go live, Cree-Ix was here, and he says, good evening, Behind the Steel Curtain family and Tony. Thank you. George Teston, Micah Everett, Stacy Lynn, checking in from Facebook. Sean Manahan, Nathan Rich, Owen David. He says, hey, Tony, how are you doing, bro? I'm doing fantastic. How about you? Owen, like I said last week, my gosh. I think Owen is the most relieved person in Steeler Nation, and that's saying a lot, that TJ Watt finally got inked to a new deal, and he'll be here for the next half decade or so. He was really wishing and hoping and just imploring the Steelers to get the deal done, and they finally listened to him, and probably Cam Hayward and Ben Roethlisberger and their own intuition, and they got the deal done. McEldew, Chloe, John Keller, Brian Gray. All right, and Brian Gray checks in from London, Canada. I almost said London, England, but I had to read the whole thing. London, Canada. So Brian Brown, Carol, you guys are awesome. If I missed anybody, I'll get you in a bit. Josh Parker. All right. So let's talk about that TJ Watt contract. How about that, huh? Speaking of news, obviously I'm glad that the deal got done. I'm really happy to see TJ Watt get the deal that a player of his magnitude deserves. The deal makes him the highest paid defender in the NFL. I was looking at some spot rack numbers, and I guess as far as guaranteed money, I guess that's not the case, because I think Myles Garrett in particular, he's guaranteed $100 million from what I've seen. But either way, as far as salary average per year, I think he's the highest paid at $28 million and change. And again, $180 million guaranteed. If I didn't mention that, $80 million is guaranteed, and it's unlike any contract the Steelers have ever given to a non-quarterback, ever given to anybody not named Ben Roethlisberger. And they really came out of their comfort zone to give him that deal. And it went to the 11th hour practically. It didn't get announced till Thursday. And there was even speculation as of Thursday as to whether or not Watt would play against the Bills on Sunday. I know he practiced on Wednesday, and that was an important factor in whether or not he would play on Sunday, because the Steelers like their guys to be full participants in practice for the most part, no matter who they are, in order for them to play in a regular season game. So there was still speculation as late as Thursday. Cam Hayward followed up Ben Roethlisberger's public cry to sign Watt when he spoke to the media on Wednesday. When Cam spoke on Thursday, he said, "Please sign Watt." It was a pretty palpable thing, and people were really anxious and wondering if this would get done, and it got done, and just in time for the season to start. And it was a really interesting thing to witness, starting all the way back at the beginning of training camp when it was announced. It was reported that Watt wasn't participating in full team drills. He was just doing his individual drills and trying to get ready that way, because he was trying to keep from being injured while negotiating this deal. So it was a pretty interesting thing to witness, starting back at the beginning of camp. And the funny part is, for probably one of the rare times in team history, the player was actually the good guy in this kind of a negotiation. It's usually the team that's the good guy, and the entity that the fans rally around or rally behind, and the player's the bad guy. Just accept whatever they give you. Be grateful that you get to play for the Steelers. Don't hold us up. What about the salary cap? Blah, blah, blah. But in this case, it was Watt was the overwhelming fan favorite. He was the overwhelming baby face in this little thing. And the Steelers were kind of the heel, not major heels, but certainly they people were not going to be happy if they didn't get this deal done. They were not going to be happy with the Steelers. And there were a few straw man arguments out there that I saw on social media, saying some people are upset with TJ Watt for what he's doing and for being greedy. Yes, some people, but not the vast majority. The vast majority were, again, firmly in Watt's corner. But there were no bad guys in this case. There never are. There rarely are, I should say, when it comes to these kind of negotiations. I mean, it's a very important thing for both sides. They're both trying to get. They're both trying to think about their future. The player's trying to think about his future, his security, maximizing his earning potential while he's at the height of his powers. Especially when you're a player like TJ Watt, when you're the elite of the elite. You're one of the few people in the NFL who can actually negotiate these kind of deals, who can make this kind of money. Even your average everyday Pro Bowl player, or especially or just a regular rank and file player, they don't have this kind of opportunity. Only these guys can have this kind of opportunity. And if you're viewing it from a player's perspective, you have to understand how kind of unfair the NFL system really is when it comes to free agency. It seems weird to you and me to call it unfair when there's so much money that these players are making and so much money that's available to them, even when they are quote unquote treated unfairly. But if you view it from their world, I mean, these guys have been living in a bubble, in a vacuum, since the moment somebody realized how great they were at football or baseball or whatever sport you want to talk about. So in their world, it's unfair that in the case of an NFL player, when it's the time for him to negotiate his second contract, which is the big one for football players who actually have long careers, when it's time for them to do that, and they're the elite of the elite, they're the elite players of the NFL. They're the perennial first team All Pros. They're the defensive player of the year candidates, the offensive player of the year candidates, the NFL MVP candidates. Those guys can't go out there and negotiate the best deal possible for themselves in free agency because of the franchise tag. So yeah, the franchise tag, when a player gets hit with the franchise tag, he gets a huge raise. He gets a huge 1-year contract, fully guaranteed, but he probably would get more on the open market. So from their perspective, it's unfair. And, the funny part is this is what Watt was going for was exactly what Le'Veon Bell was going for a few years ago, 2 years in a row, actually, 2017 and 2018, when he was at the height of his powers as one of the best running backs in the NFL, arguably the best running back in the NFL, maybe even the most important offensive player, most valuable offensive player to his team in the NFL, non-quarterback anyway. And the hang up, just like with Watt, was guaranteed money. And the Steelers were obviously they've had a long standing policy of not guaranteeing money beyond the first year of a contract. And that was a sticking point, and it never got resolved. And Bell was tagged in 2017. He played on that tag. He held out of camp, and he played on the tag in the regular season. And then 2018, they tagged him again because they couldn't come up with a new deal. And he held out the entire year. So in that case, Bell was the bad guy, right? He was the bad guy. And a lot of people say, well, he was the bad guy because he held out of camp and he was vocal about it, and he didn't participate in OTAs and all that stuff. That's why he was the bad guy. And Watt didn't do any of those things. He came to camp, and he may not have participated in team drills, but he participated. He showed up. He worked. He kept in shape. He lifted weights, all that stuff. The difference is Watt never got to the point in his contract drama that Bell did. But Bell was hit with the franchise tag, whereas Watt never got to that point. We'll never know how Watt would have handled being franchise tagged in 2022 or 2022 and 2023. We don't know how he would have handled that. Would he have been happy? Would he have held out? Would he have refused to sign the deal? Would he have demanded they trade him, trade his rights, if he can do that with an unsigned player, even if he's on the tag? I don't know. We'll never know. We saw maybe a preview of what he might have done based on his quote unquote hold in during camp. So Bell was going through for the same thing that Watt was going for, and that's guaranteed money. And if you're TJ Watt and that Myles Garrett got what he got, and that Joey Bosa got what he got, who else am I missing? Aaron Donald. The money that they got. Well, you're going to want, when it's your time to get paid, when it's your time to negotiate your deal, because you're the elite of the elite, you're one of the game's best players, as Ben Roethlisberger said on Wednesday, maybe the best player in the NFL. You're going to want to talk what those guys got, and that's how they keep score. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows this is how players keep score, especially the All Pros, the first team All Pros, the MVP candidates. They keep score with their contracts, and in today's day and age, that's guaranteed money. it used to be not long ago. It was the signing bonus. Now it's guaranteed money. How much are you willing to guarantee me throughout the duration of the contract at signing? How much am I going to get? So that's how these guys keep score. And if you're Watt, why should you settle for the Steelers' way of doing things just because they drafted you? I mean, you didn't choose to work for them. They chose you, So why should you settle for this this way of doing business when everybody else, all your colleagues, all your peers out there, they're getting their guaranteed money, but you have to just take the Steelers for their word. I was reading an article the other day from Mike DeCourcy of the Sporting News, a great article detailing how the Steelers do things and how they always take care of their players. Yeah, sure, they only guarantee money they don't guarantee any money beyond the first year, but trust me, they're going to take care of you. They're going to take care of you. They always take care of their guys. You'll get the pretty much every penny that the contract's worth through the duration of your deal. So don't worry about that. However, nothing's fully guaranteed. Nothing's truly guaranteed unless it's in writing and your name's on the contract. So if I'm Watt, why would I, or any player in his position moving forward, why would you accept a different set of rules just because your bosses do things a different way? So when you look at it that way, and the money that's out there for these players, if they were free agents, it's easy to see why Watt was so insistent on getting the guaranteed money, and why the Steelers basically had to eventually give in and go way out of their comfort zone to do that. And retroactively, you could see why Bell fought for what he fought for. Yeah, he played a different position, running back, but that's not, still he was one of the best. And why should he be punished because he's a running back? And TJ Watt's an outside linebacker. Yes, running back's more of a grueling position than linebacker, but let's face it, all these guys are one play away from suffering a major injury that could alter the rest of their careers, if not end it. So, these players are just going for, they're trying to get all the money that they can, because why shouldn't they? They're the very best in the world at what they do, and the money's out there, and they should fight for every penny of it. So it's not really about security. They always say security. It's about security, but let's be real. If it was about security and securing your future and your family's future, the $10 million that Watt was set to make, or is going to make in 2021, that should be enough, right? If it's not, you're doing it wrong. It's not about that. It's about I'm the best at what I do, and I should be paid the same or more than what these guys are getting. So that's the player's perspective. And I have a super chat in here from for one of our regulars. I gotta find it. So bear with me for a second. Hopefully I didn't miss it totally. Oh, there it is. It's from Ryan O'Toole, and he pledges $5 or donates pledges like it's a telefund, but he donates $5, and he says, "Sorry, I missed a few Fridays. Think this was a one-off for Watt, or will we see them guarantee more than the first year going forward on contracts?" I am glad you said that, Ryan, because that leads in perfectly to the Steelers' perspective on this, and that is. I just want to, before I begin that part of it, I just want to share a story that I read in Bill Cowher's book, Heart and Steel. And it was from the early part of his career, 1994, right at the beginning, early stages of free agency, unrestricted free agency in the NFL. And Merrill Hodge was a free agent. He was a very popular running back, very valuable member of their team. Not a superstar, but he was a valuable member of their team. He played special teams. He was He was a good running back. Obviously, he had that great playoff run in 1989. Just a really good all-around player. Somebody you want to keep on your team if you could. And a deal wasn't getting done. And Cowher, he knew that they needed another running back. So why not keep Merrill? He was a team leader. He was great in the locker room. He wanted him, and his coaches wanted the team to sign Merrill Hodge. So one day, Cowher, according to him, he went into Dan Rooney's office, the late chairman of the team. He said, Dan, Mr. Rooney, why aren't we getting Hodge signed? What's the holdup on this? We need him. We need Merrill Hodge. We got to get this deal done. And according to Cowher, Mr. Rooney got up from his desk, walked over to his door, shut his door, and came back over to Cowher and said, look, I love you, Bill. We're behind you. We're glad we hired you to be our head coach, but please don't ever tell me how to spend my money. And that was it. There was no further discussion. There was no Merrill Hodge. Find another running back. And that was it. And my point is, the Steelers have always had their own way of doing business. We know this. They have their own unique way, and it's worked for them for the most part, right? And they can't be an organization that gives them the public pressure, gives them the social media pressure, gives them the media pressure, even their own players and coaches. Like you saw with Ben and Cam Hayward the other day. I'm sure they didn't necessarily they weren't too pleased about two of their biggest leaders and stars going public and saying, "Hey, sign TJ Watt." I'm sure they weren't pleased with that, even though these guys are team leaders and pillars of the community, especially Cam. It still wasn't probably a wise move on their part. But what do they have to lose? Especially Ben. What does he have to lose, right? So they have their way of doing business, and it's worked for them. But they knew they had to change with the times and start guaranteeing money beyond the first year of a contract. So they knew they had to give in and give Watt more than they're used to giving a player. However, they couldn't just snap. It wasn't just like, all right, we're just going to give TJ Watt whatever he wants. We're just going to draw a blank check, give it to him, and have him put the amount in, and we'll sign it, and boom, we're good to go. They couldn't do it that way. There's too much at stake. This is a very big decision for them. This is a something they're going to have to operate their business around for the next 5 years, right? They knew this going in. So that's why it took so long for them to get this deal done. That's why it went up to the 11th hour. They have a policy of not really negotiating contracts during the season. So that's why people were so worried when Thursday rolled around and the deal still wasn't announced. They had to take their time and they had to get it right. And they did. And when you think about the Steelers and who they are, not only are you asking them to come out of their comfort zone with this deal, this guarantee money, you're asking them to go from 0 to 90, quote unquote, TJ Watt's number, in one off season. What's the most I think I heard that they ever guaranteed was like $37 million to Ben. So now you're asking them to guarantee $80 to $100 million. That's a big move for them to do. So they did it, but it doesn't mean that there won't be a ripple effect for this. I mean, they had to know this too. They had to know that when they made this unprecedented deal with a non-quarterback, with TJ Watt, it was going to have a ripple effect on how they do business in the future. And like Ryan O'Toole was saying, do you think it's going to be a one-off? A lot of people were trying to say that. Well, the Steelers are just going to tell their future stars that it was just that TJ Watt was the exception when it came to the guarantee money, and they're going to go back to we're just going to negotiate the way we used to. You can say that all you want. That's not how the world works. And again, these players keep score with their contracts, especially the superstars. And Minka Fitzpatrick is the next in line, supposedly, presumably, to get a new deal. And while he's not going to get the same kind of deal that TJ Watt got, he's going to want to reset the market for safeties, provided he's still an all-pro safety. He's going to want to reset the market. He's going to want to receive the richest contract in the history of the NFL for his position. And again, he's going to want a lot of guaranteed money. That's just how these guys operate. And that's what owners have to deal with. It's constant salary inflation, especially with the superstars. So, they said, people were saying, well, if they don't get a deal done with TJ Watt, if they stand hard and fast on their policy about guaranteed money, it's going to prevent them from signing some of their future stars, because they're going to see, like a Minka Fitzpatrick or a Devin Bush or somebody like that. If he becomes a star, they're going to see that the Steelers didn't give Watt what he wanted. They didn't give Bell what he wanted back in the day. So we're not going to get what we want. So we're just going to take a hard line ourselves until we're a free agent. Now we're going to go get the best deal possible with another team. But that's probably going to happen anyway now, because you can't give every superstar the richest contract that they could possibly get. You can't make everybody the highest paid player at their position. I don't care how big the salary cap balloons to. I don't care how big these TV contracts are. It wasn't long ago that $100 million salary cap was considered a lot. Yet it didn't prevent teams, including the Steelers, from spending up to the cap. So, they're going to have all these decisions to make. There are going to be sacrifices. What if Alex Highsmith is the next Bud Dupree? He's certainly not going to be able to get a deal here. So, believe me, they were considering all this when they were doing this deal with Watt over these last few weeks. It's not just as simple as give him what he wants, and there's a lot more to consider than just that, right? This is a team that thrives on being competitive each and every year. That's their goal. I remember Jerry Dulac, who's a longtime Steeler insider for the Post-Gazette, and I think he's on the radio network, the Steeler Radio Network. He said a long time ago, their goal every year, their minimum goal is to make it to the Final Four, meaning the conference title game. That's their minimum goal. So, we saw it 2 years ago when they lost Roethlisberger, and they still did everything they could to make the playoffs. This is a team that is almost allergic to the thought of rebuilding. So they're always going to want to have the most competitive 53-man roster they can possibly have. So that makes it's harder to do that when you're signing all these players to lucrative deals, and now with all this guaranteed money. And what if you find your future franchise quarterback sooner rather than later? And then you're gonna have to pay him. And even average quarterbacks now are making $20 million, right? Your average your Sam Bradford's of the world. Remember, not that long ago, he signed a $20 million deal, and he's Sam Bradford. So, there's a lot to consider. So, yeah, the Steelers came out of their comfort zone, and they gave Watt the money he wanted and the deal he wanted, and 2021 Steelers are better for it, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to affect how they do business moving forward. It's like it's a huge bill that they're going to have to work around for the next half decade. So Ryan, do I think this is a one-off? No, I don't. They can try to make it a one-off and try to make Watt the exception to the rule of how they do contracts, but it's not going to work, because Fitzpatrick, Devin Bush, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, whoever, they're going to say, well, you gave Watt all this guarantee money. Well, I'm not gonna sit here and be treated differently. I'm a superstar too, So it's gonna set a precedent that they're gonna have to abide by now, if they want to keep future superstars of their own. So on that note, at the 29 minutes. Wow, I've never talked so much without taking a break. I'm pretty excited about the start of the season. So on that note, I'm gonna take a break, close out the first half of the show. If you're watching me live on YouTube or Facebook, please stay with me. I'll be right back. If you're listening on audio platform, I thank you as always for downloading and listening to part one. But please come right back and download and listen to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defio. I spent 30 minutes of the first half of the show talking about TJ Watt's contract and both the perspective of the player and the team, and how there are usually no bad guys when it comes to these kind of deals. It's nothing personal, just business. But like most of Steeler fans, I'm pretty excited they got this deal done, and that TJ Watt will hopefully be wreaking havoc on opposing tackles and quarterbacks and running backs for the next 5 years. So it's good to see that get done right before the start of the season. And speaking of the start of the Steelers season, they head into Highmark Stadium against the Bills as basically a touchdown underdog. I was checking the odds the other day. They're one of the biggest underdogs going into the first week, which is kind of odd because the Steelers are the defending AFC North champions, and the Bills are the AFC runners up. Usually, that's the kind of matchup that's more of a pick'em, especially if you're the Steelers. You're used to being in these kind of games, but you're used to having more of a chance to win, or being given more of a chance to win by the experts, the fans, and the odds makers. So it's a strange spot to see Mike Tomlin's team in, but I guess it's not much of a shock if you're an objective fan, an outside fan, football viewer who doesn't have a dog in the fight. You'd probably say, yeah, I could see the Bills winning this game and winning it pretty handily. They're hungry. They're a franchise that's been downtrodden for basically 2 decades until recently. They had that long playoff list drought. I think it lasted almost 20 years. Of course, they had a lot of bad luck in the 90s. I mean, had a lot of great times, meaning the Bills, but they lost 4 straight Super Bowls, which is great that you can be that competitive, but it's also, it leads to a lot of heartache and a lot of bad memories and a lot of jokes. So they've been a franchise that's been looking to get over the top for quite some time, from an organizational standpoint and down to the fans. They finally want to win a Super Bowl, and this is their best chance to do that probably since the days of Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and Andre Reed and Bruce Smith and you name it. There was a lot of great teams back then. So this is their best chance. Josh Allen is now considered one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. He just signed a huge mega deal for $258 million. He's beaten Steelers the last 2 years in a row. He's a dual threat. He's got one heck of an arm. He can run when he wants to, and he's one of the best in the game at doing that. And of course, he has a great stable of receivers, starting with Stephon Diggs, who I think he led the league in receiving yards last year. He certainly had 1,500 receiving yards, which is a lot. Cole Beasley, Manny Sanders is with them now, so they're going to be hard to stop from when you're talking about from a passing standpoint. And they have a pretty good defense. Not a great defense, but a pretty good defense. Certainly opportunistic. They had 26 takeaways last year. They have one heck of a secondary with Trey White. What's his name? Levi Wallace, I think his name is. The other cornerback. He's also really good. Probably be a lot more famous if he wasn't playing on the same team as Trey White. And Micah Hyde, safety. So they're a really good defense. Not a great pass rush, but pretty darn good. And we saw it the last 2 years. We saw it in 2019 at Heinz Field. The defense kept Duck Hodges in check, which I guess it might not be saying much, but certainly last year they had their way with Big Ben and that struggling offense at the end of the year when they beat them in Buffalo. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a big challenge. But if there's ever a time to surprise a really good team and play a really good team, that's week 1. Other than, as we saw last year with Pittsburgh, with many teams when they played the Bengals, unless you're struggling. But other than that, the best time to play a really good team is week 1, because no team is truly fully formed at the beginning of the year. I don't care what you do in training camp, how intense you are, how hard you hit, which you really can't do much anyway, how much you play in the preseason. No team is truly fully formed in September. And the team that you usually see in October and November is way different than the team you saw at the beginning of the year. So this might be a good time to catch the Bills. They're going to be rusty too. They might be determined. They might be hungry, but they're still going to be rusty. So this might be a chance to surprise them. And believe me, the Steelers didn't show us everything in the preseason, certainly not in the preseason. And we know they didn't show us everything in training camp because the reporters are only allowed to tell the public what the players and the coaches tell them. They can't really comment on anything that goes on in practice unless the coaches or players talk about it. So it's going to be interesting to see what they hit the Bills with offensively. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle their sub packages on defense. How do they handle the nickel? Is it going to be Schobert and Bush staying in there for the nickel and just moving Cam Sutton inside and bringing in Pierre or Witherspoon? Are they going to play a lot of dime? And if they do, how are they going to utilize Minka Fitzpatrick? That's what I'm pretty excited to find out. Because from some of the things I've read, like I mentioned last week, it seems to me like he's going to factor more into the dime backer role than we think. Even though he's a free safety by trade, he's such a valuable weapon, and he's somebody that you could utilize and really cause a lot of chaos for the opposing quarterback and offensive coordinator. So these are kind of the things I'm looking for on Sunday. Alex Highsmith, he's dealing with a groin issue right now. But he's questionable right for Sunday's game, but he did practice on Friday, which is encouraging. But what's even more encouraging from a depth standpoint is they have Melvin Ingram. They went out and they got him. All off season, you were just riddling me with questions and just badgering me. What about the depth, Tony? What about it? I'm like, it's not that big a deal. Who cares? It's about the starters. Well, now we see why you were so adamant about them addressing their depth issues at various positions, because Melvin Ingram can make a huge difference right away in week 1. Whether Highsmith starts or not, you figure Ingram's going to play a lot because he's going to have to spell Watt, who's probably still not in tip-top football shape just yet, and of course Highsmith, who's dealing with an injury. So he could prove to be a valuable weapon for them, a valuable addition starting in week 1. So those are my thoughts on the Bills game. I look for it to be close. I predicted that they would lose by a field goal. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong, but I think my gut's telling me that it's going to be a lot like the Dallas Buccaneers game from Thursday night. The Steelers are going to lose a close one, but they're going to leave everybody more encouraged about their prospects in 2021 than they were going into the game. I think somebody joked this morning on the radio, or maybe it was on social media, that by losing a close game to the Buccaneers, the Cowboys established themselves as the favorites in the NFC East, because we always joke about how mediocre or worse the AFC or the NFC East division is. So now the Cowboys may have established themselves as the favorites even after losing to the Super Bowl champions on Thursday. So I think it might be that kind of thing with the Steelers on Sunday. I think they might lose by a field goal, but I think they're going to put on a good show and we're going to be more encouraged by their prospects than we were going in. I certainly think it's going to be a lot better feeling coming out of that game than it was 2 years ago when I went to New England and got their doors blown off in week 1. Was it 33-3 or 30-3? That was before Ben even got hurt. But yeah, that was a horrible performance. I don't see that happening on Sunday. I think the Steelers are gonna put on a good show because I think these two teams match up well with each other. We saw that the last 2 years. The Steelers really had a chance to win both of those games, but they made too many mistakes, too many key turnovers, and I think that was the difference both times. So as long as they can avoid that, they might give themselves a good chance to win on Sunday. So on that note, I will open things up to some questions and comments. I'll see if I missed anything juicy while I was rambling on and on. Here's one from Greg talking about Bell and his contract thing from a few years ago. Bell may have been a great player, but he had off the field issues. Mainly it had to do with missing or being suspended for violating the NFL's drug policy. He was on the verge of suspensions. How can a franchise pay with that kind of risk? What does not have the risks? Well, they're all it's a risk to sign any NFL player to a guaranteed contract because they can get hurt at any time. But if you remember 3 or 4 years ago, they were trying to get a deal done with Bell. I mean, they were trying to make him the highest paid running back. It was just a matter of the guaranteed money. So they did value him enough to make him a part of their organization for a half a decade or so. It was just they couldn't agree on the guaranteed money. So they weren't as concerned with that as the fans were. But as it turned out, it seemed like it worked out for for the Steelers because Bell was never really the same after that. Really, after the 2016 season. Buck Dancer asks, any news on what Tuitt's knee injury was? No. I mean, it's been a big mystery so far. Nobody seems to know how severe the knee is. It could be that. It could be conditioning. It could be he's still grieving from the loss of his brother. Nobody knows because they're so secretive about that stuff now. As far as disclosing the injury status of a player, they might say a player's injured and they might say what the injury is, but they never really say how severe it is. You never know if you can believe them when they say a player's close or you just don't know. So I have no new insight to give you on that one, unfortunately. And Tom Vallegio asks, can you give us an injury report if the guys will play Sunday? The only one I think is up in the air at this point is Highsmith. He's questionable. Everybody else, I'm not sure. Alu was on the injury report, and I think he may have missed the other day, or he was a partial participant, but he's back. So I think they're in fairly good shape as far as the guys who aren't on IR, meaning Tuitt and Banner and McFarland. I think everything else they look to be in fairly good shape. So as far as an injury, the injury front, they're doing a lot better than the Ravens. I'll tell you that. The Ravens are really having some issues right now with injuries. My goodness. And Brian Brown asks, Tony, some of the BTSC gang picked Buffalo to win. You don't think the Steelers will lose, do you? Well, I actually picked them. I was one of the people that picked them to lose. I don't know if that was published yet, but I picked a 20-17 score. That's how I think it's going to go down. I hope I'm wrong, but they're not going to go 17-0. So when you're making these predictions every week, you have to be objective, as objective as you can be as a Steeler fan. And this is not this would not be a shocker if they lost. So I never root for them to lose. I never hope they lose. Sometimes I think they'll lose, and this might be one of those weeks where I think they will lose. What else we have here? Buck Dancer says that Josh Allen, in his opinion, is not in the top 5. Well, I mean, you're in the minority there with that opinion, because a lot of people have put him in that upper echelon. I hope I'm wrong about that too. I hope they're all wrong, because I don't need another Tom Brady in the AFC East. I'll tell you that much. Brian Brown says the Steelers are going to win this game. Buffalo is not unbeatable. Michael O'Malley, welcome to the show. He says Bills look good, but they're beatable for sure. Our time. Okay. I hope you're right. Stacy Lynn says if we get the lead, and we need to keep the lead and not be a second half team, meaning come from behind the second half. Well, if they do get a lead, this is where we'll get to find out about that running game, the last place running game from 2020. We'll get to see just how good Najee Harris is, and how much that line has progressed since the beginning of training camp, how cohesive it is, how well it plays together. That's still a huge question mark, as we know. Dan Moore Jr. is going to be starting his first game as a rookie at left tackle. Kevin Dotson left guard, presumably Kendrick Green at center. The veteran Trey Turner, and Shooks is over on the right side at right tackle. So yeah, that line has a huge performance ahead of it on Sunday, and of course the rest of the year. And people are going to doubt that line until they give them reason not to. That's just how it is when you're a question mark in the world of professional sports. People are going to doubt you until they don't. Buck Dancer's ranking the current quarterbacks, and wow, he's showing Big Ben more love than most people. He says Tom Brady, of course, Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, then Ben at number 5. Well, I hope he has that kind of year, because that would bode well for the Steelers and their chances of being competitive. And Steeler Chick 46 asks, did Mike Tomlin go to college with Buffalo's head coach Sean McDermott? I'm not sure. I think they did, but I know they're really good friends. I know they're really close. They have a relationship outside of football, so or at least a pretty good relationship. Anyway, they know each other. They're good friends. All right. And Monka asks, did you play golf, Tony? I tried to play about 15 years ago. I tried to get into it, but I hurt my shoulder, and I never played golf. Not beyond the occasional putt golf date in recent years. No. But I did get into it for a time, and I was really starting to enjoy it, especially the putting aspect of it. But I hurt my shoulder, and then I picked up volleyball and bowling, and those became my obsessions for a decade or so. Tony, 1 to 10 O-line expectation. I guess that's the on a scale of 1 to 10. I think they're going to be better than last year, which was probably about a 3 or a 4. I'm going to say 6 or a 7. And as others have said, if their line is simply average this year, it's going to be way better than it was last year, and they're going to be able to function a lot better. But who knows? Hopefully, it's even better than that, because that would be great if they can have that kind of a that kind of a line. And Cree X asks, Tony, what's your thought on how many passes Ben will throw Sunday? Well, I think any quarterback that throws 25 to 30 passes a game probably has a better chance to win than when they throw 60 passes. Although, if you saw Thursday night's game, I mean, Tom Brady and Dak Prescott put on a show. I mean, as much as we like to say, you got to run the ball, let's face it, it's passing. It still drives the bus, so to speak. But hopefully for Ben, it'll be one of those 25 to 35 pass performances, and he's efficient. He has a high yards per attempt number, because that usually bodes well. That means there's a lot of big plays, and you're getting the ball downfield, not 50 yards downfield, but you're completing those mid-range passes and not 45-yard passes and 2 or 3 deep passes. That's what we saw a lot of last year. We don't want to see that this year. Like most big-time quarterbacks make their bread and butter or make their money with those 15 to 20-yard passes. So hopefully it's like 25 to 30 passes, 250 yards, a few touchdowns, no interceptions. We'll see. All right. And Kriek says Bills 26, Steelers 14. That's basically the score that they had last year. It was 26-15. George Teston says 27-14. I'm sorry, 27-24 Steelers. Brian Brown, this would be a cause for celebration, a lot of smack talk on social media. He says Steelers 27-10. Steeler Chick says 21-17. That'd still be a lot of reason for a lot of smack talk online. Hope you guys are right. All right. Lifelong 07 says about the Steelers O-line. At this point, I think those guys are better because they're younger and can do a little more. But if you base a quarterback on what he's accomplished, Ben would be. Oh, he's talking about the he's talking about the quarterback rankings. Yeah, I guess they're still having an argument over who what the pecking order is with quarterbacks, and the Super Bowl winners are being weighted heavier as far as some are concerned. It's hard to argue with that. You're not considered anything until you win a Super Bowl when it comes to a quarterback in the eyes of many. So, Buck Dancher says 17-13 Steelers. Stacy Lynn says 24-23. Michael O'Malley says 35-17. Wow, that's crazy. And he says Defio's Deviants. That's my crew name. I still prefer Def Squad. And Buck Dancer says, Tony, we need your top 5. As far as quarterbacks, whoo! Obviously, you're going with Brady, Mahomes. Oh, gosh. Brady, Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers. Pretty easy. I think Deshaun Watson was in there for a while there, but with his troubles now, it's hard to say where he's at. I think he's still really talented. But he's in a bad situation in a lot of ways with his organization and his personal life. So Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers. Gosh, who am I missing? I know there's more out there. I'd say Ben's he's hovering around the 10th spot right now. I think he's not in my top 5. I'm sorry to say. I think Josh Allen's closer to top 5 than Ben is at this point. It just is the way it is. He's younger. He's like Ben 15 years ago. So, it's hard to beat that. Hopefully the old gunslinger can do that this week. Lamar Jackson's probably up there a little bit closer to top 5 because of what he means to his team and his offense. That team revolves around him, and as he goes, they go. So I'd say Lamar is up there too, pretty high. I think Justin Herbert. I mean, he's only had 1 year, but I think he's in the top 10 right now. Kyler Murray. I mean, there's just a lot of great young quarterbacks out there. So, but Ben's still pretty good. I don't care where you rank him. If you want to rank him 5th or 10th, he's still pretty gosh darn good. And you need that guy to win. And the one thing that we have to remember with the TJ Watt thing, the contract, is as valuable as he is, as important as he was to get under contract. If they don't if they go 5 years after Ben without finding another really good quarterback, they're probably not going to win. that just shows you how valuable it is, or how valuable a franchise quarterback is. You can rank him anywhere you want. You can have all these debates. If you have that guy, you have a chance. And let's just hope that Ben does so much this year that he gets that people are mad if he's left out of the top any top 5 discussion. And on that note, I think I will call it a night. I thank you guys for joining me. It was a fun conversation. I really had a good time. I hope you enjoy Sunday's game. I hope we get to talk about a thrilling or maybe a blowout victory for the Steelers on Monday on The Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis and Shannon White. And until I see you then, I hope you have a great weekend, and go Steelers.